Hello, my friends. How are you all doing? I hope everybody is having a fantastic and amazing day. Yeah? Well, if you ask me, I had rather a very, instead a very boring and tiring day. But I think, just to make as bright as yours, we are going to begin with a new chapter, which is Forest Society and Colonialism, which is chapter 4th. Yeah, so this is Janvi, your history educator on Study Room, and today we are going to talk about forest society and colonialism. So, you have paper in your books, right? Then you have desks and tables where you work, then doors and windows, the dyes that color your clothes that you wear, then spices in your food, then the cellophane wrapper of your toffees, then the tendu leaf in the beedies. Obviously, you're students, you won't be using beedies, but then still you have it, right? Then gum, honey, coffee, tea, rubber, then bamboo, charcoal, fruits, vegetables, birds. Oh my god, there are so many things that we attain from forest, right? Like I can't even name them. It's a long list. So I've just named a few, right? There's a fun fact that in the Amazon forest or in the Western Ghats, it is possible to find as many as 500 different plant species in just one forest patch. So astonishing, right? In fact, between 1700 and 1995, the period of which is the period of industrialization, 13.9 million square kilometer of forest or 9.3% of the world's total area, it was cleared for industrial areas, for industrial uses, cultivation, pastures, and fuel wood. So that's very saddening. Like this, the amount of quantity the forest give us and what we give it in return, it's very saddening to know. Well, so today we are going to talk about forest society and colonialism. So there are two different concepts and how they are relatable. Okay, so first of all, what is forest society? We are going to see about that. So what is forest society? And so, okay, if you ask me what is forest society, so it includes those people or the life forms who earn their livelihood from forest, or they stay in forest, or they are dependent on the forest products. So this is in general a forest society. The next concept, that is the next part, it is colonialism. So what is colonialism? That we are gonna study, and its reasons, that why it came, then the impact. So this is all we are going to study in this chapter about. So what is colonialism in brief, if I would say? So it is the domination of one country over the other. For instance, before independence, India was colonized by Britain, right? You do remember. So this is about colonialism. So thus herein, like in this chapter, we are going to see how the forest society was affected by colonial governments, and likewise the impact of forest society on colonialism. So in both the ways we are going to see it, that how it impacted each other. Now to narrow it down, this chapter it is going to revolve around concepts like deforestation. Okay, so these are the concepts which we are going to study. So concepts like deforestation, what it means, then the causes behind it, what are the reasons, then the consequences. Then second concept is the commercial forestry. So again, its meaning, then the reasons, impact, then what the process is all about. So commercial forestry. And lastly, we are going to take up two most important case studies, which are of Bastar district of Chhattisgarh and Java, which is in Indonesia. So two case studies we are going to take up. Okay, and this is all, these case studies, these are in reference to colonialism. So we are going to study forest society and colonialism and their interaction. Okay, so let's just begin with the chapter. So, first of all, why deforestation? Because as I told you, the first concept we are going to study is deforestation. So, firstly, what do you mean by deforestation? So, deforestation simply means disappearance of forest or cutting down of forest, right? So, deforestation basically means what? Cutting down of forest. So, you should know that deforestation hasn't been a recent problem. It has been there since ages. Okay, apparently, if you ask me, so the process began, like the process of deforestation, it began many centuries ago. But under colonial rule, it became more systematic and extensive. So here we have a video in which you can see that how the forest cover it has been reduced over the years. Like when you play the video, you'll be able to see that. And actually, it's a short video where it has been described that what are the reasons for deforestation. So why deforestation has been done, why people do it. So it is mainly for agriculture. Obviously, you clear up the land to go for more crops. So for extensive agriculture, then building factories, industries, then for wood and fuel, and to make houses and roads. And then after that, it has been given in the video that what are the real consequences of deforestation. So it can be soil erosion, then it can be floods, droughts, pollution, temperature rise, etc., etc. So all of this you can watch in the video. Okay, so as I said that under colonial rule, why the Britishers they were making the system more systematic and extensive. So for that they were doing deforestation. So there are three major reasons for why the Britishers did deforestation. So the first reason is that they wanted the land to be improved. Okay, so this is the first reason why they were doing deforestation. So this is the first reason. Okay. So what happened that in 1600 approximately one-sixth of India's landmass it was under cultivation. So but as and when the population increased over the centuries and the demand for food went up, the peasants they extended the boundaries of cultivation. They started clearing up the forest and breaking the new land. So there, the Britishers they encouraged the production of commercial crops like jute. So these are the commercial crops like jute, sugar, wheat, and cotton. So do remember these are the commercial crops. Okay, so Britishers they started to encourage the production of commercial crops. So thus, in the 19th century, the demand for these crops greatly increased. Then, in the colonial period, you can also see that cultivation expanded rapidly for a variety of reasons. So, the colonial state thought that the land could yield. So, this is one of the reasons why they were going for more and more cultivation of commercial crops. So, the colonial state they thought that the land could yield agricultural products and revenue, and hence enhance the income of the state. So that's why they went for expansion of cultivation, like mostly for commercial crops. Now, between 1880 and 1920, the cultivated area it actually rose by 6.7 million hectares. Now, there's this one thing that we always see the expansion of cultivation as a sign of progress, right? But we should not forget that for land to be brought under the plow, forests have to be cleared out, right? Like obviously, if you need more forest, like if you need more trees, then the earlier ones they have to be cleared out. So in all, the Europeans they encouraged commercial agriculture, and they also thought that forests were unproductive. So this is one of the reasons why they went on for deforestation, because they wanted the land to be improved. Okay. Okay, now there's this one more thing. It is called terra nullius. White settlers, this is just one of the key words which has been used in the chapter. So, white settlers, they were guided through the landscape by Aboriginal tracks and they were led by Aboriginal guides. So, the different Aboriginal communities in Australia, they had clearly demarcated their territories. So, this land, like there was this one territory which they demarcated. So, that land, it included five different environments. Okay, so there was this one land and that included five different environments. Okay, so the first environment which it included it was salt water. Then the second was riverine tracts. Then there was bush, like there were bushes. Then there were lakes. And finally, there were desert plains, okay, deserted areas. So this is how they demarcated their land. So this land actually satisfied different socio-economic needs. So when the white settlers they landed in Australia, they claimed this particular land, this, their continent, that it was empty. So the empty word is called terra nullius. So this is one of the words which has been used. Okay, just remember, they might just ask you that what do you understand by the term terra nullius. So it means empty, that the settlers, the white settlers, they claimed the continent to be empty. That is why it was called terra nullius. Okay. Now, the first reason we already studied, that land was to be improved. So that's why Britishers were doing deforestation. Now, the second reason, it was sleepers on the tracks. Okay, so this is the second reason. Sleepers on the tracks. So, what are sleepers first of all? So, sleepers, they are the wooden planks which are laid across the railway tracks. So, like if suppose this is a railway track. Okay, so these, which are laid on the tracks, these are called the planks which are laid on the railway tracks. These are called sleepers. So they hold the track in positions. That's how the trains are running on the tracks, right? Now, what happened by the early 19th century? The oak forest in England, they were disappearing. The oak forest, there was oak and all, it was disappearing. So this created a problem of timber supply for the Royal Navy, because obviously they wanted timber. So, by the 1820s, search parties were sent to explore the forest resources of India. So, within a decade, trees were being felled, that is, they were chopped down on a massive scale, and vast quantities of timber, they were being exported from India because they were in need of timber, obviously. So, large quantities of timber, they were exported from India. Then, from the 1860s, the railway network, it was expanded rapidly. Then by 1890, about 25,500 kilometer, of track which had been laid down. So by 1890, around 25,000 kilometer of track was laid down. Then in 1946, the length of the tracks had been increased to over 7,65,000 kilometers. It has been mentioned here. So that is the length of the track. Okay, this 7,65,000 kilometer is the length of the track. So that had been increased to over this much kilometer. Now, as early as the 1850s, in the Madras presidency alone, this is just a fact thing, that like this shows that how many trees were chopped down. So as early as in the 1850s, in the Madras presidency alone, around 35,000 trees, they were being cut annually just for the sleepers, like just to make the tracks. They were cut down annually. Like how much? Around 35,000 trees. Big number. So, the government, it gave out contracts to individuals to supply the required quantities of timber. So these contractors, they began cutting trees indiscriminately. So forest around the railway tracks, it started disappearing. So this is how the forest around the railway tracks, it started disappearing, and lands were cleared down, like they were chopped down completely. So this is one of the pictures where it has been shown the spread of railways in India in 1850s, which created a demand for timber. But the demand was created in Britain. Okay, so this is the second reason. Now this is in relation to the same thing, that is the third demand, which is plantation. Okay, so actually not the third demand, it is the third reason why they were going on for deforestation. So which is plantation. So, large areas of natural forest, they were cleared to make way for tea, coffee, and rubber plantation to meet Europe's growing need for these commodities. So, as we, saw in the second reason for plantation, which was sleepers on the tracks. So, for timber production in Europe, trees were being cut down in India, right? So, the same way, just to make way for tea, coffee, and rubber plantation, just to meet the growing demands of Europe population, just for these commodities, because they used to consume tea, coffee, and rubber so much. So large areas of natural forest were also cleared down in India. So the forests, they were taken over by the colonial government, and they gave vast areas to European planters at cheap rates just to plant tea or coffee. So European planters, they were given vast areas at cheap rates just to go for tea and coffee plantation. So that's how the colonial government was taking over the forest. So these are the three main reasons why they were going in for deforestation. Okay. Yeah, so this was all about deforestation. Okay, now the next concept which we are going to study today is the rise of commercial forestry. Okay, so under this rise of commercial forestry, first of all, we have that that time Britishers, they were worried that reckless use of trees by the traders and use of forest by local people, it would destroy the forest. Obviously that might would have been the cause. So there was this one German expert who was Dietrich Brandis. So he became the first inspector general of forest in India. Now he realized that a proper system had to be introduced to manage the forest land, and people had to be trained in the science of conservation, that okay, this is how you conserve the forest. So he formed rules about the use of forest resources. So these are few of the rules. It's okay if you don't even remember these. So the first rule, very simple. It's like he made sure that felling of trees and grazing, it had to be restricted so that the forest could be preserved for timber production. Okay, obviously he will be going in for timber production, but he made sure that it should be in a restricted land. Then second rule, it was that anybody who cuts the trees without following the system, he will be punished. Then planting the same type of trees in a straight row, it was called plantation. Okay, so the forest officials, for that, they surveyed the forest, they estimated the area under different types of trees, and they made working plans, for forest management. So they planned how much of the plantation area, like how much of the plantation area was to cut every year. So they made everything according to a plan. So the area was then cut, which was to be replanted so that it was to be ready to be cut again in some years. So once they cut the area, then the area was replanted, and then again, like the same area, the cut area, it was replanted, and so that it can be ready to cut again in some few years. But all of this, it needed legal sanction. So thus, Brandes, he set up the Indian Forest Service in 1864. Okay, so thus Brandes set up the Indian Forest Service in 1864, and then he formulated the Indian Forest Act of 1865. This is very, very important. Okay, so the Indian Forest Act of 1865. So, the Imperial Forest, there was this one Imperial Forest Research Institute which was set up at Dehradun in 1906, where scientific forestry was taught. So, basically, scientific forestry, where these rules were being taught. And what exactly is scientific forestry? So, it means that, the natural forest, which had lots of different types of trees, they were cut down, right? They were being cut down. So, this was all taught, okay, they are not to be cut down, and in their place one type of tree was to be planted in straight rows. So basically plantation was being taught. Okay, so the rules and the plantation was being taught under scientific forestry. Plantation means basically that in one single row you'll have to plant only one type of tree. So one type of tree. Planted in rows. Okay. So this is how Brandes, he came up with the Indian Forest Act of 1865. He formulated that. So he was the first Inspector General of Forest. Now the Indian Forest Act of 1878. Okay. So, in 1906, the Forest Act, which was amended twice, once it was amended in 1878 and then in 1927. So the Act of 1878. Yeah, so actually, the act was passed in 1865, but then it came into being in 1878. So that's why you need to remember 1878. Okay. So, the Act of 1878, it divided the forest into three categories: the reserved forest, then the protected, and the village forest. So do remember, this is very, very important. So the Act divided the forest into three categories: reserved, protected, and village forest. So the best forest, they were called the reserved forest. So there the villagers, like in the reserved forest, the villagers could not take anything from these forests, and like even for their own use they could not take anything. So the reserve forests are the best forest. Okay, now just for house building and for wood or fuel, they could take wood from protected or village forest. So basically for reserve forests are the best forest, where villagers were not allowed to take anything, but for wood and fuel for making their houses, they can take wood from protected and village forest. So basically, this is for taking wood. Okay, so they were allowed to take wood from protected and village forest, but not from reserved forest. Okay. Now, because we have been studying a lot so far, so just a brainstorming question for you. So you'll have to find out 5 states which have large reserved and protected forests respectively. So I'll just tell you in short, like obviously you can also find it out, but let me just give you an answer of this. So for the reserved forest, so the 5 states which have reserved forest, so in India it is Jammu and Kashmir, then Andhra Pradesh, then Kerala, then Tamil Nadu. I'm writing it in short, okay? Tamil Nadu, then there is West Bengal, then there is also Uttarakhand, okay? Now, when we talk about the protected forest, so the states which have protected forest, so they are Bihar, then it is Haryana, then Punjab, then Rajasthan, and Odisha. So now it is Odisha, okay? So these are few of the states, okay, which have large reserved and protected forest respectively. Now, okay, there's yet another question for you. So, if you were acting as the government of India in 1862 and you were responsible for supplying the railways with sleepers and fuel on such a large scale, then what were the steps you would have taken? Okay, so if you ask me, I would have taken the following steps. Like, first of all, I would have made sure that in areas where the trees are cut for making the sleepers, so I would go and plant similar, like obviously I won't go, I would tell my system to go and plant similar nature of trees to those that are cut so that the forest cover is maintained so far. Okay, so planting trees. So the first step, what you would have taken, that planting trees in place of the cut ones. Okay, so as to just maintain the forest cover. Okay, then the second step, I would have tried to increase coal mining. So increase coal mining. And this coal which would have been produced, I would have supplied this to the railways as fuel instead of wood for running the steam engines. So instead of using wood to run the steam engines, I would have increased coal mining and then supplied this coal to the railways. So increase coal mining. Then the third step which I would have taken, it should be to limit the cutting down of trees by the natives of the forest. So the natives, that is those who are living in the forest, so those people shouldn't be like cutting down the trees. So I should have limited that. So limit the cutting down of forest by the natives of the forest to only what they personally require and not allow them to trade in wood. Okay, so trading would have been prohibited. So basically limit the cutting down of forest by the natives. Okay, so this is just for the natives. Then finally, I think, I would have prevented the poachers from entering the forest to cut wood illegally. So prevent poachers. So poachers are the basically the people who kill animals, and in fact they have trees and woods cut down also illegally. So I would have prevented that. Okay. Now, coming back to the rise of commercial forestry. So, in that, the first thing which we have is how are the lives of people affected? Okay, so we studied what all commercial forestry was all about. Now, because of that, how are the lives of people affected? So, in forest areas, people use forest products for many things, right? There are many things for which people are using the forest products. Like, for example, fruits and tubers are nutritious to eat, especially during the monsoons before the harvest season. Then herbs are used for medicines. Then wood is for agricultural implements like plows and yokes. Then bamboo, it makes excellent fences and it is also used to make baskets and umbrellas, right? Then, there's this one thing that leaves, it can be stitched together to make disposable plates and cups. So, and then there's this one of the creepers called siadi, which can be used to make ropes. So, there are many forest products which forest people use, right? So, villagers, they actually wanted forest with species of different types to satisfy their needs for fuel, fodder, and leaves. But on the other hand, the forest department, like the forest officials, they wanted trees like teak and sal. So, the forest department, they just wanted the trees like teak and sal, which was suitable for building ships or railways. Okay, so why they needed teak and sal? For building ships and railways. So, the Forest Act of 1878, it meant severe hardship for villagers across the country. So, if you want to know that how were the lives of people affected, so they were leading a hard life. Okay, so people, they were forced to steal wood from the forest. Then the forest guard, they used to take bribes if they got them caught. Like obviously they are only telling them to steal it because of these reasons, and then if they get caught, then they will have to give a bribe to them. Then police constables and the forest guards, they used to harass people by demanding free food from them. So this is how the lives of people were affected because of the rise of commercial forestry. So everyday practices of collecting wood, grazing, hunting, and gathering food, it became illegal. So everything was becoming illegal, and if people were doing it, then they will have to give bribe to the forest officials, and they were even punished by the forest department. Okay. Now, the second question is, how did the forest rules affect cultivation? So, the European foresters, they regarded shifting cultivation as harmful for the forest. So, why did they regard it as harmful? So, there were following reasons. So, the first reason it was the loss of land for cultivation of trees for timber. So, timber actually required a big land for cultivation. So, like as compared to the other crops, timber actually required a huge area of land. So this is one of the reasons why they regarded shifting cultivation as harmful. Second reason was danger of forest fires. So there was loss of livelihood. Then most of them actually they were using forest grown products to make money by selling it. So the forest fires, they frequently used to happen, and hence they used to destroy timber, and that's why it was leading to loss of livelihood. Then difficulties with tax calculation. So the government, it was difficult for the government to calculate the taxes, and hence the government, after all these reasons, it decided to ban shifting cultivation. So it put a ban on shifting cultivation, and because of that there was displacement. So displacement, why? So people were actually forcibly displaced from their homes in the forest. So some, they resisted through fights, rebellions, large and small rebellions, but most of them, they had to be displaced. So there was displacement. Okay. Ban on shifting cultivation. Okay, so this is how the forest rules were affecting cultivation. Now, this is just a picture of man doing shifting cultivation. So just to tell you what is shifting cultivation, so it is actually still practiced to this day, and there were attempts made to stop it, but it was all like unsuccessful. So shifting cultivation is a traditional agricultural practice in many parts of Asia, Africa, and South America. So what exactly happens in this shifting cultivation? So parts of the forest, first of all, they are cut down and then they are burnt in rotation. So like it is rotated, okay. Then seeds, they are sown in the ashes after the first monsoon rains, and the crop is harvested by October to November. Okay, so then such plots, they are cultivated for a couple of years. They will be cultivated, and then they are left for 12 to 18 years for the forest to grow back. Like for the entire forest to grow back, it will be left, that entire land will be left for 12 to 18 years. Then a mixture of crops are grown on these plots. So this is how shifting cultivation occurs. So, just for an example, in central India and Africa, it will be millets which were produced by shifting cultivation. Then in Brazil, it was manioc. And in other parts of Latin America, it was maize and beans. So these are few of the crops which were produced by shifting cultivation. Okay. Now, next up under commercial forestry is who could hunt. Okay, so this is very surprising that British they used to give rewards for the killing of tigers, wolves, and other large animals on the grounds that they posed a threat to cultivators. Like, okay, these are the animals which are posing threat to the cultivators. So those who will be killing these animals, they will be given reward, like they will be rewarded. So there were certain areas of forest which were reserved for hunting in particular. So hunting was a big sport. Okay, now the new forest laws, when they came, so they changed the lives of forest dwellers. Now, so this actually, the Indian Forest Act of 1878, it changed their lives. But what was the life before the forest laws? So before the forest laws, many people who lived in or near the forest, they had survived by hunting deer, then partridges, and a variety of small animals. They used to hunt down all of them. So this customary practice, it was prohibited by the forest laws. So when the forest laws came into being, all this was prohibited. So those who were caught hunting, they were now being punished for poaching. In India, if we talk, so hunting of tigers and other animals had been part of the culture, right? Since beginning, like since we see ancient history or medieval history, it has been part of our culture, of the court, then the nobles, in centuries, like it was centuries ago. So many Mughal paintings, they show princesses and emperors who are enjoying a hunt. So they used to enjoy it as a big sport. Then, so this is how the scale of hunting it increased to such an extent since then that various species they became almost extinct. So the Britishers they saw large animals as signs of a wild, primitive, and savage society. Okay, so they believed that by killing dangerous animals, the British would be civilizing India. So that's why they promoted hunting. Okay, so you should hunt so that we are making India a civilized nation. So, in numbers, if we see, so there were over 80,000 tigers, then 150,000 leopards, and 2 lakh wolves, which were killed for just, to give people reward in the period between 1875 to 1925. So, this is one of the pictures of Lord Reading who was hunting in Nepal. So, hunting became a youth sport, a big sport. Okay. Now, this is the last topic under our commercial forestry, which is about new trades, new employments, and new services. So, what exactly happened that as the forest department took control of the forest, so some people they were benefited from the new opportunities that had opened up in trade. So there were new opportunities opened up in trade. So many communities across the world they left their traditional occupations and they started trading in forest products. So trading began. Okay. So, with the growing demand for rubber in the mid 19th century, the Munduruku people of the Brazilian Amazon. So, this is one of the examples of the Brazilian population. Okay, so there's this one Munduruku people of Brazil. So, like these are few of the examples. So, this is how we also have examples from India. So, this is one of the examples from Brazil. So, there were this particular tribe, Munduruku. So they, they used to stay in Amazon. So they lived in villages on high grounds and they cultivated manioc. And hence they began to collect latex from wild rubber trees for supplying it to traders. So this is how trading was beginning. Okay, so some were benefited because they took up trading. Then in India, if we see, so the trade in forest products was not new. We were already trading, right? So from the medieval period onwards, we have records of Adivasi communities. So in India, it was Adivasi communities. So we have records of Adivasi communities trading elephants and other goods like hides, then horns, silk cocoons, ivory. Oh, that's very expensive, right? Then bamboo, spices, fibers, grasses, gum, and resins through nomadic communities like Banjaras. So basically, Adivasis may it is Banjaras. Okay. So, the British government, it gave many large European trading firms. So, British government was not giving its control in the hands of Indian population or let's just say Brazilian population. Okay. It was actually giving the entire control in the hands of European trading firms. So, they had the sole right to trade in the forest products of particular areas. However, so this is how trading was giving new opportunities to few of the people. However, new opportunities of work did not improve the well being of the entire population. So there were many, like there's a bright side to it, which we saw that, okay, trading was good. But then there is a negative side to it too, which is that there were many pastoralist and nomadic communities like the Korawa, then the Karacha and the Yerukala of the Madras presidency. They lost their livelihoods because of this new trading thing. Then there were some also, like there were some tribes which were labeled as criminal tribes, and they were forced to work in factories, mines, and plantations. And in fact, tribals, they are still employed on coal mines today, if you know about it, like in those restricted areas, those very, backward areas. So they were regarded as criminal tribes and they were forced to work in factories, mines, and plantations. All right. Now, just to continue with this, so men and women from forest communities like Santhal, so these are some of the tribes you'll have to remember. Okay, these are very important tribes. So then there's another tribe, Santhals and Orans from the Jharkhand and Gonds from Chhattisgarh. So they were recruited to work on tea plantations in Assam. So this is one of the pictures. So if we talk about these people who were working there, their wages were low. Then there were pathetic work conditions. The working conditions were pathetic. And they could not return easily to their home villages from where they had been recruited. So they were recruited in Assam, for example, for tea plantation. So they actually couldn't easily return back to their homes. Okay, so this was all about deforestation and the rise of commercial forestry. I hope you would have understood all of these points because they are really important, like how the Indian Forest Act came into being, that is of 1878. Then Brandis, like about Brandis, who was the first Inspector General of Forest. So all of this is really important. So do make notes of it. Now, in the next video, we are going to take up rebellion in the forest, which talks about two case studies in particular, which is the case study of Bastar, which is it is a district in Chhattisgarh, and second of all, it is in Java, which is Indonesia. So these are the two important case studies which we are going to take up in the next video, and a few related questions to the entire chapter. So, okay, so this was all about today. It's a very lengthy video, I guess, but it's very, very important. And there were many facts which you'll have to remember. You'll have to write down because they have been asked in the exams very frequently. So that's all for today. Thank you and have a nice day. Bye bye.